You know, some people, through their actions and their sacrifice, they become something more than just historical figures. They become symbols. We call them heroes, martyrs, icons. Today, we're going to dig into one of the most powerful examples, the figures known simply as the butterflies.
Now this quote, this is what I find so interesting, because it just flips the script on our usual idea of a hero, right? We picture them as these unbreakable people, born without an ounce of fear. But this suggests something way more real and honestly, way more powerful. That courage isn't something you just have, it's something you build.
And that leads us to the big question for this whole explainer. When we take a complicated, messy, real human being and turn them into a simple, two-dimensional symbol, what gets lost in translation? What vital parts of their story just vanish? And maybe more importantly, what do we lose in our ability to really connect with them?
To answer that, we've got to look at the real people behind the legend. So we're heading to the Dominican Republic to talk about the Mirabal sisters, the women who would eventually become Las Mariposas, the butterflies.
Okay, first, you got to have the context here, because it's crucial. From 1930 all the way to 1961, the country was under the iron fist of a dictator named Rafael Trujillo. And this wasn't just some tough government. We're talking about a full-on regime of terror, constant surveillance, and state-sponsored violence. Stepping out of line was not an option.
And right in the middle of this climate of fear, 4 sisters from the Mirabal family made a choice. Patria, Minerva, Maria Teresa, and their sister Dede, who would actually survive to tell their story, they all got active in the underground movement against Trujillo. In the face of absolute terror, they chose to fight back.
This timeline just lays it all out so clearly. It kicks off in 1930 when Trujillo's dictatorship begins. Then you fast forward to the 1950s and you see the Mirabal sisters joining the resistance. And then their story takes this incredibly tragic and pivotal turn, November 25th, 1960, the day they were assassinated. But their story didn't end there, not by a long shot. Their martyrdom became a rallying cry. And as you can see, by 1999, that exact date is recognized by the UN as the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. They went from being rebels to a global symbol.
But here's where things get complicated. See, in becoming this powerful symbol, their story risks being, well, flattened. It gets simplified into something that's easy to admire from a distance, but really, really difficult to truly understand. So let's unpack what that actually means.
So it all comes down to this contrast. The symbol of the butterflies is this flawless, fearless political icon. But the person? Oh, the person was so much more. They were complex women who absolutely felt fear, who were sisters and mothers and daughters. They had doubts and worries just like you and me. The symbol is like a marble statue. The person was flesh and blood.
Which brings up a pretty critical question for all of us, right? When a hero is presented as perfect, can we actually see ourselves in their story? Can we draw any real inspiration from a myth that feels so untouchable, so far away from our own messy human lives? This is where a really powerful and maybe kind of surprising tool comes into play: fiction. Yep, storytelling, and specifically historical fiction, has this incredible ability to find a deeper truth, to rescue the human beings from behind the historical monument.
Now, when we say historical fiction, we don't just mean making stuff up. It's a genre that takes all the known facts, the names, the dates, the events, and then uses storytelling to explore the inner lives, the emotions, the motivations behind it all. It fills in those human gaps that the history books often have to leave blank.
And this method, it's totally universal. It doesn't matter if we're talking about the Mirabal sisters in the Dominican Republic, or, as other analyses show, female fighters in the Salvadoran Civil War. This approach helps us get past the simple label of revolutionary so we can see the actual person who made the incredibly brave choice to resist.
And probably the most famous example of this is Julia Alvarez's novel, In the Time of the Butterflies. The book takes this legendary symbol of the sisters and just carefully, beautifully unfolds it to show us the women who are really inside.
So how exactly does fiction do this? How does it rehumanize a symbol? Well, the novel basically has this 4-step playbook. 1, it reveals their inner doubts and fears, which proves they weren't immune to terror. That makes their courage a choice, not a superpower. 2, it dives into their complicated family dynamics, reminding us they were sisters who argued and loved, not just a unit. 3, by giving each sister her own unique voice, it breaks them out of that monolithic symbol and makes them individuals. And finally, 4, it builds real empathy through all the small human details, painting a picture of full lives that existed way beyond their political work. And this, right here, is the ultimate achievement.
We get to see that their incredible courage wasn't just their factory setting. It was a conscious, difficult, and frankly terrifying choice they made over and over again in spite of their fear. And that makes their bravery infinitely more powerful.
So this all brings us to the big takeaway. How we choose to tell and remember these stories, it matters a lot. A nuanced human story isn't a lesser version of the truth. It's a truer one. I mean, this simple chart really says it all. The simple myth, yeah, it has some impact, sure, but it's the complex human story that creates that deep, lasting connection. It's the difference between admiring a statue from across the park and feeling like you've actually met a person.
So what have we learned? Let's break it down. First, symbols are great. They inspire us, but it's the human stories that actually connect with us. Second, fiction can sometimes reveal a kind of truth that plain facts and dates just can't get to. And finally, maybe the best way to honor our heroes is to remember all of them, their flaws, their fears, the whole package.
And listen, it's so important to get this straight. This approach is not about diminishing their legacy. It's about enriching it. It's about seeing that their incredible impact didn't come from some superhuman place. It came from a very, very human one, which, when you think about it, makes it something we can all aspire to.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to chew on. Think about the heroes and historical figures you admire. Whose story do you only know one version of? That flattened, simplified one. And what do you think you might discover if you tried to unfold